I like the idea of like the Golden Girls
Exactly.
getting together and solving mysteries.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it.
Hello and welcome to Every Edition, your tabletop RPG talk show. I'm Jesse.
I'm John.
And today we are looking at the G.I. Joe new role-playing game using the Essence20 system.
Our random encounter today, we're going to be taking a look at the Marvel Multiverse role-playing game Playtest.
And of course, we have our morale check where we take a look at tabletop news and everything going on in the tabletop world. But first, John, how you doing?
Great. I'm getting ready to head back to my first convention, not only since the pandemic, but probably since, the 2000s, the 90s.
Really?
Like, it's been a long time since I've gone to conventions. I used to go regularly with my dad.
Sure.
Throughout the 90s, went to Origins, went to Gen Con a couple times. I don't think I went since I was, a college student, grad student, young parent.
Too busy.
Too busy. Yeah. So this is a triumphant return, and obviously the first time going back to a convention with Every Edition.
Yes, this is the first Every Edition convention.
It's going to be awesome. So I'm going to be sporting an Every Edition shirt, different color, every day, all 5 days of Origins, and I posted on our Facebook the games that I'm signed up for. I'm most excited to be playing, actually, the old West End Games Ghostbusters role-playing game, which I've never played, and there were only 4 tickets available, and it was the first one I grabbed.
Nice.
Me and a buddy, and so looking forward to that. I think I'm going to wear my Ghostbusters jumpsuit, flight vest. So
Yes.
So Jesse, how are you doing?
I feel like if everybody comes to the table in like regular clothes, they're doing it wrong.
Probably. I mean, I go a little overboard.
I'm doing great. Recently, I've been spending a lot of time in my homebrew world of Illyria.
Yeah.
That's a 5th edition setting for now 2 of my D&D campaigns. And that's been super great. Every Wednesday on my stream is World Building Wednesday, and we spend some time with the community just sort of, hashing ideas, using various prompts to talk about, what would a random treaty be? Okay, well, now I have to think about different factions and things. It sort of gets your brain going. You get to think, and I get to involve the community in that process too. But it's been really fun, sort of being creative and creating things for the world for my players to
That's
sort
great.
of tool around with.
And more to come with your world building and streaming, right?
Oh yes,
Excellent. Good.
Oh yes.
Where can people find you?
Well, so my personal stream is twitch.tv/vexinglive. That I'm Vexing Live on all socials. I've even started to tool around with some D&D content on TikTok. I think that's pretty interesting. Sort of bite-sized like DM tips and things like that. So there's some good stuff there.
That's great.
Okay, it's time for Morale Check. Our Morale Check is where we take a look at everything going on in the tabletop industry and news of the week. So this week, we've got some info on D&D Beyond. They've recently been acquired by Wizards of the Coast, and sort of one of the first things that Wizards is doing is giving away free books.
Yes.
Including Acquisitions Incorporated. So you get that free. I think it by the time this goes up, it may have expired. It was only, I think, for like a weekend or a couple days.
Yeah.
But I think that is good. Is a good indicator that Wizards will do this again in the future with Acquisitions Incorporated, likely, and with other books, maybe some ancillary books, as they push more and more 5th edition books out.
Yeah, they've got to do something to draw people to D&D Beyond. There's a lot of other platforms and just PDFs and other ways to get the media, and they're not as of now they're not bundling the physical and the digital, so there is digital competition.
Yeah.
So that they're fighting a little bit of an uphill battle. You also they're giving out what is that? Lost Mines of Phandelver.
Yes, the original starter set.
The original starter set adventure. So they are, and you can also get the Monsters Compendium, the first 10 monsters from Spelljammer. So they're doing things to drive people to the to a thing. And like I said, it made me create an account, and
Yeah.
I am not a digital citizen when it comes to role playing games. Like
Sure.
I'm not interested in that. But it's exciting. I hope the more they give away, the more people they're gonna draw to it.
Yeah, if people are going to try to find books like Acquisitions Incorporated for free, because it is a $50 book, might as well be on their official website.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep them there.
So in other news, the Gauntlet gaming community recently successfully kickstarted a really cool looking role-playing game called Brindlewood Bay, which is a cozy murder mystery RPG. The description for it, the tagline for it is combining Murder, She Wrote with H.P. Lovecraft. And the Kickstarter that they just successfully ran, you could get the core rule book, you could get an adventure book, and then exclusively to the Kickstarter was a third book that was a cookbook.
Oh.
That was an in-game artifact. So it was actually like put together by NPCs in the world of Brindlewood Bay. Really cool. The art is very evocative of this sort of like cozy mystery kind of feel. Lots of like cutesy old people on Vespas and water towers and sort of idyllic settings and stuff like that. I saw it and I was like, oh yeah, I gotta check this out.
That's fantastic.
So we'll be bringing that to the table probably next year.
Yeah, whenever it comes out.
But very cool. I'm excited for that. I'm sure there's going to be an opportunity if you miss the Kickstarter, probably a backer kit or something like that for you to jump in. So check out the Gauntlet gaming community and their game Brindlewood Bay.
I like the idea of like the Golden Girls
Exactly.
getting together and solving mysteries.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it.
So it seems like I've been talking about Magic the Gathering a lot on the podcast lately. And that's because there's, it's made by Wizards of the Coast. They have a lot of crossovers, but this one in particular is a big one. It's the next set. It's called Commander Baldur's Gate. It is a set in Baldur's Gate, so every card has to do with D&D. I predicted sort of last year that every year there's going to be a D&D Magic set.
Yeah.
And that's 2 years in a row, so I'm hoping that next year we get another one, maybe Neverender or Neverwinter or something like that.
It's a no-brainer from here on out. If they don't do one every year,
it's so great.
What are they? Yeah, I totally jumped on the Adventures of Forgotten Realms.
Yes.
And then, had very little to do with Magic for most of the year. And now that they're going to be going back to Baldur's Gate, I'm like, oh, hello, Magic, my old friend. So it works for me.
And from a DM's perspective, I really like them diving more into it because most Magic cards have like a line of text at the bottom that's just flavor or something a character is saying or an extra bit of lore, but you also get the art. And there's so many Baldur's Gate a little bit less because there's video games set in it and there's like other books and whatnot, but certain settings don't have official artwork yet, and now they're getting official artwork. So if we go into a specific area, I can have something to show my players like, hey, this is what you see,
right?
Which I really appreciate. But there's also in the previous set and in this set there's a heavy focus on the D20. There's a couple of cards that say, when you do something, roll a D20, and that affects your outcome, which is really awesome because it's D&D.
Not a spin down life counter, a
yes.
D20.
So if you play the pre-release or whatever, they give you a regular D20, not a spin down, which
as they
I appreciate. Yeah. But there's a ton of dragons. There's the gates of Baldur's Gate are actually like players and characters. They're cool. Official cards. And then there's like actual people like Volo and Minsk and Boo that make appearances too. So I'm really pumped about this set. I think almost all, if not all, of the cards have been officially revealed, and it's going to be fantastic.
Cool. Yeah, they leaked an Elminster card?
Yeah, an Elminster. Tasha,
cool.
She's got a card too. It's fantastic. And the art is just insane.
Yeah.
It's the quality of art that Wizards has put into both the D&D books and Magic recently has been insane.
And it is the only set too that I collected the art cards.
Yeah.
Also, so I'll end up doing that again as well. It's fun. It's just another level of fun
and collecting.
Yeah, collecting. So great. So finally, there is a Kickstarter going on right now for a role-playing game called Everyday Heroes. And this is by the makers of the D20 Modern game, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary. D20 Modern was a game based on 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons that gave you rules for playing in a modern setting with 3rd edition rules. Well, this is going to update it to play 5th edition in a modern setting. So it's going to be 5e rules. There is currently a free quick start rules available on DriveThruRPG. Get a free PDF. And one of the things that's particularly interesting about this, besides the fact that it's an anniversary somewhat for D20 Modern, but Everyday Heroes is going to actually have setting books that are going to be based on movie properties. So there's going to be a setting book for Pacific Rim. There's going to be a setting book for The Crow. There's going to be a setting book for Universal Soldier, for Total Recall, for Escape from New York, for Rambo, and for King Kong Skull Island.
That's fantastic.
What more do you want, people? Like,
Skull Islands is going to have King Kong, but it's also going to have dinosaurs in a modern setting. Like, that's awesome.
I guess I'm particularly interested in. I have a real soft spot for Escape from New York.
Okay,
I think that's Carpenter's best.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
I love it. So I'm curious to at least check out that book. Some of the other properties are really stretching it in terms of being, cult classics or
The Crow
hits or whatever. Total Recall's another one. I'm sort of curious about it. I'd check that out. But so each of those books is going to have, it's going to be half an adventure that's set in that movie universe, and then half of it is going to be a rules expansion.
Sure.
And what they say they're going to do is they're going to collect all the rules expansions and release a second hardcover that's going to be like an annual.
Sure.
So they'll update the game every year with the different properties and the rules expansions that have come out. And if you want the adventure, though, that's only going to be available in the movie tie-in book. Not sure if the movie tie-in books are going to be digital only or if they're going to see a physical release. That's still sort of nebulous on the website. This isn't one I'm planning to back. It's one I'm just planning to watch and see what happens.
Yeah, I feel like in the second year or third year of this sort of excursion, they could get a couple more properties that might draw me in.
Yeah.
That aren't they're not going to be heavy hitters like Alien.
Right.
But there could be some really fun ones. Like they could do an Evil Dead. I think that'd be really fun.
That would be fantastic.
And other sort of I don't want to say B flick, but sort of B flick. IPs.
Well, I mean, Universal Soldier to me is not one that is crying out. I'm not aware of a huge Universal Soldier fan base.
Yeah.
But at the same time though, having Rambo, having Escape from New York, Total Recall, those do have those have bigger fan bases, so they're getting something. And I think Pacific Rim definitely hit that giant monster kaiju
along with King Kong.
That's so they've got that down. Pacific Rim was fun. Everyday Heroes, it's on Kickstarter right now. Check it out. And like I said, I'm going to check it out from a distance, and I'm going to especially keep my eye on what's happening from Escape from New York. If that gets a physical release, I am all on it. All right, so are you excited for any of the Everyday Heroes movie properties? I'm clearly interested in Escape from New York, but what about the others? And are there any movie properties out there that you would love to see get this type of mini sort of campaign expansion for a role-playing game? It is going to be based on 5th edition, folks.
Yes.
So, if you're a lover of that game, this is seems kind of like a no-brainer. It's probably worth me saying, though, too, Troll Lord Games already has a 5th edition modern rule setting out called Amazing Adventures. And so if you don't want to wait for Everyday Heroes, you want to bring a 5th edition modern game to the table right now, go check out Troll Lord Games and check out Amazing Adventures. It uses the Siege engine just like Castles and Crusades.
Yes.
Super great system. But let us know what you think. everyeditionrpg.com. That's where you can find links to all of our socials, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We've also got links to our podcast on Apple and Spotify. And of course, you can find us right here on YouTube, drop a comment and let us know what you think. All right, it's time for a random encounter. Today's random encounter, we are taking a look at the Marvel Playtest for the new role-playing game. Jesse and I had a chance to bring it to the table, and we're going to do a breakdown of the system a little bit and a book review. Then we'll talk about our experience. There will be spoilers when we get to that point, and we'll warn you about that when we get there. But truth be told, there's nothing to spoil.
Yeah, there's not really much to spoil.
So we'll let you know, but like, honestly, I don't think you can spoil a playtest. Like, and then finally, we'll talk a little bit about some of the online feedback that we've encountered and some of the fan support and community that's building up around the playtest. All right, so let's talk about the system, the game mechanics, and the book itself. Jesse, what's your takeaway on the game system in the book?
So the Marvel Multiverse uses its own brand new dice mechanic of 3d6s. You do everything that you do in the game with 3d6s. It's sort of their 616 dice mechanic.
Right.
So any time you would go to do damage or roll for a skill, you roll 3 sixes, you add them up and add whatever bonuses you get. They're sort of like a critical mechanic. One of the dice that you use is a Marvel dice. No dice have been made for this game yet, but that's beside the point. So you signify that one die is special. If you roll a 1 on that die, it is always a 6. So essentially you're rolling, 2 through 6 on that die. And then if you get a 616 on your roll, that is considered a critical. I like this system only because it's like pretty simple. It's simple math. It's not, you're not rolling a d20 plus something else, plus this, plus that. You're just rolling 3d6s, adding them up quick, and you have your bonuses or whatnot. I think it's fine. I really like the sort of cheeky 616 critical because, for those of you who don't know, Marvel's Earth that is the main sort of player of all of the movies and whatnot is called Earth 616 in the multiverse. So that's a cute little nod to that. I think the system's fine. Coming off of like the Year Zero engine from Free League, it's definitely a little bit more fun rolling a bunch more dice than just sort of 1d20. So that's fun. I liked it.
Yeah, and the rolling 3d6 really is a replacement for rolling 1d20.
Yeah.
It's sort of almost like a 1-for-1 substitute. You're taking the 3 dice, you're rolling those instead of a d20, and you're kind of doing a lot of the same stuff that you would do in a game like 5th edition or any really d20 based game. You're just subbing out 3d6 rather than 1d20.
Yeah.
Okay. The book itself is cool. It comes in the format of a modern Marvel graphic novel.
Yes.
Comes in, right? It's the same size and shape.
When it came in the mail, I was astounded because I hadn't thought of just doing it like a normal graphic novel. It's just sort of the size of a regular comic book, and it fits on the shelf exactly with all the other graphic novels from Marvel.
Yeah. So that right away was cool.
Yeah.
I actually bought it in a local comic shop, so saw it on the shelf next to the other comics. It all made sense. That'd be a great way to kind of continue to release books for this line. It does look like they're going to do a hardcover, more traditional role-playing core book. But who knows what's coming down the pipe. Let's move on to the experience of the playtest itself.
Sure.
So what you ran the playtest for us. So what was your experience like preparing for that and running the adventure that's in the book?
So the book actually, it comes with character creation stuff in it. As it's a playtest, there's I think 11 characters that we get to pick from if you want as like superheroes already made, but there is character creation in case you want to do that. It's pretty involved. I'd say most of the prep time that I did was just learning combat and learning the way that the sort of pluses and minuses work and when to use them as a GM. Prepping for the session itself, like in terms of the adventure, took all of about 5 minutes because they present you with the stats for the bad guys and you just fight them. There's no real like epic story, it's meant to be a one shot.
Yeah.
So that wasn't too bad, but trying to figure out where in the book everything was, like, oh, hey, if they have a question on, can I use this ability here, or what kind of check would I need for this thing? It's not a 1-for-1 for 5th edition, which is what I'm most familiar with. So that was more of my prep. So reading up on the sort of nuances of the game was really the time sink.
Yeah, the one thing that I was thinking about as a player was all the powers were new.
Yeah.
Right? Like I wasn't familiar with the powers in the book. So it really felt like everybody, and again, for lack of a analogy here, everybody was playing a sorcerer.
Sure.
Right? Like all the powers were like spells. Right? And so you had to study up, right? And because we were like rank, they have ranks instead of levels in the Marvel game. And I think we were like rank
10.
Rank 10 or something
10
like that.
15.
So we weren't like beginning, right? Where we weren't like starting from level 1. So we were kind of like the equivalent of being dropped into being, a 5th or 6th level character in D&D, and everybody being dropped into playing a 5th or 6th level sorcerer without knowing spells already. So
it's a lot of reading.
So it was, it's like, flipping through and like learning what the power did and that kind of stuff. So you definitely need to have a group that is up for that. Yeah. If you're the type of player that really prefers to not play the wizard because they don't want to do all that reading and potential player prep, might not be the game for you unless you're playing like a street level Marvel character.
Yeah.
Right.
So there was an instance where one of the players, they had like 10 or 11 different abilities, and one of their abilities made them immune to something or whatever, or they couldn't, they gained health by taking a certain type of damage that the bad guy was using. And because there's just so much going on and so much information that you're dropped into, everybody just completely, they just missed that.
Yeah.
So we just end up not using that. But if you play a character that doesn't use a whole ton of those abilities, you then have a different like subset of rules, like how much damage you deal to a wall and how much damage you deal to someone who you throw through a wall, like as the Hulk or whatever. There's a lot of moving parts, and it was surprisingly complex.
Yeah, well, let's get into the actual adventure itself, and here's where we'll start to get into spoiler territory.
Sure.
If you're interested, but here's the deal, folks. Like we said at the top of this, I don't think there's much to spoil because here comes a spoiler. Essentially, there's 2 fights.
Yeah.
One is easy and one is hard.
That's it.
That's it.
That's literally it.
There it is.
It's not like game-breaking or earth-shattering lore on Iron Man or anything like that.
Right.
It's just a fight in a building.
Right.
And I don't know. It was like I said, really easy to prep for. They give you the stats for all the bad guys, and then they say for the hard fight, it's just all of the players but evil.
Right.
So it was a lot of looking at the character sheets because we created characters for most of them, and going based off of that.
Right. Yeah, so that wasn't, and that's the whole, that's basically the whole story. So there's nothing to spoil there. It is a playtest, so it seems like, really what it's wanting you to playtest is combat, right? Like that's what this book is all about. You're getting character creation, and so you're getting the opportunity to roll up a character and read about the powers and kind of get your whistle wet, right, with that kind of stuff. But in terms of the adventure with it, not much of an adventure other than duke it out with some hydras and then fight yourself.
So I want to break down the ranks a little bit. They sort of scale in 5s. So you start at rank 1. The next big upgrade is rank 5, then 10, and so on. So if you think about superheroes, it goes up to 25. Rank 10 is what they say Spider-Man is. He's a hero that protects a city. So he's got a lot of powers, but he's sort of limited to that. Thor protects like a whole world. He's a rank 20. So he's essentially double in power, if not way more than a rank 10. And then Silver Surfer, who is a sort of galactic superhero, is a rank 25, and that's the cap.
Okay.
So we were playing rank 10 and 15 characters. So a little bit on the average to below average size. We had Black Panther on our team, we had Groot on our team, and we had some character created superheroes. But as such, because the second fight is the hard fight, we were fighting against rank 10 and 15 versions of ourselves. And when fighting against a higher rank, you could see the gap of between 10 and 15. Like, we were trying to fight Evil Groot, and that was a pain because he had so much HP and we were not doing any damage to him.
Yeah, you had to gang up on him.
Yeah, you had to
That was the
gang
only way to do it.
But on the flip side, for the easy fight, the rank 1 Hydra peons had 5 health. And because of the way that the dice system works, you're rolling 3d6s, and you're a superhero, your bonuses to the 3d6 have to be so high to feel like you're doing a bunch of damage as a superhero, right? Some people were adding, like, they were rolling 3d6 and then adding 32 to their damage.
Yeah, one shot,
which was bizarre and a whole other topic. But when you're dealing that kind of damage to a rank 1 peon, there's no competition. Even if they gang up on you, you're throwing them through the wall. They're disintegrating. Like, superheroes aren't supposed to kill people, but they're essentially dying in one hit.
Yeah.
But then it's like a sort of rude awakening as soon as you get to the second fight.
Yeah, it went from too easy to too hard.
Yeah, you
right?
had to suddenly strategize.
Yeah, it really was. It was hot and cold.
Yeah.
In terms of that sort of playtest of combat, and we kind of longed for the middle because we were just learning our characters and like what they could do and that sort of stuff. Not a lot of opportunities for role play here.
No,
right?
no.
Not a lot of opportunities here for really getting into your character and exploring or anything like that. It really was a combat simulator.
Yeah. At least not in the playtest. I feel like this game does have grounds for building your own team, like your own X team or your own Avengers or whatever within your group if you really like that, but not in the playtest.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into final thoughts, community feedback, community support, and what's out there. So, in terms of my sort of final thoughts about this and the experience I had doing the playtest, had fun, but I was really surprised at how much people liked it and how much math it had. And what I mean by that is how complex it was, right? We had been playing, Tales from the Loop and the Alien RPG with a group of people who aren't role-playing regulars. And so they were new to role-playing games, and they liked those games because they were very rules light.
Yeah.
Right? And we switched to this Marvel, and they liked that too. And I was shocked because of it's much more rules heavy, rules encumbering. And so what I was left with was the power of an IP, the power of an intellectual property, and how much people love Marvel. And so how far they're willing to go to essentially play a game that's not that great.
It's very
I mean,
lukewarm.
I think it's got promise. It shows potential. I'll play it again in its full version.
Yes.
Hopefully they balance some stuff out. But it certainly didn't. I didn't get the same like good feeling that I did from any of the Free League stuff we've been playing, or even a more complicated game like Dungeon Crawl Classics or 5th Edition or something like that. It was lukewarm. It really but man, the people we were playing with loved it, and I was just like, that's because they love Marvel. And so, man, imagine if the game was good.
And there's, I don't want to sort of sound like we're, gatekeeping role-playing games, but we all have a similar story where we've tried to get somebody into role-playing or something similar, and we present them with 5th edition or Pathfinder or anything like that, and they sort of look at all the complexity and they just shut down and they're like, nope, this is not for me. So we show them, Free League things or rules light things as a sort of gateway into everything. But this Marvel one seems like one you could put in front of new players with the promise of like, you could play your own superhero, or hey, you're a big fan of Iron Man, you could play as Iron Man.
Yeah.
Here you go. And people will be willing to sit through and sort of slog through things that they wouldn't otherwise be, because it's Marvel.
Yeah. No, it just struck me. If you don't have a powerful IP, you've got to be rules light, right? Because, and if you are an IP, then you can have a more rules heavy game, because that really will get you pretty far. I mean,
Carries you far.
Obviously, Dungeons and Dragons is a heavy hitting IP, right? It's a name brand, right? To the point where that's, that people say that when they talk about playing any role playing game. Oh, I'm playing D&D tonight, but they're playing, whatever,
Anything else,
anything. But so, if you don't have that IP, that name brand behind you, you don't have, there's not going to be the same level of interest, and so there's not going to be the same buy-in if the rules are complicated.
Yep.
So, man, you can get away with a lot, though, if you've got a powerful IP. I mean, the theme of today's episode, really, if you think about it, right? We've got that. We're going to be talking about the G.I. Joe game in just a little bit in our Loot the Body segment, but the power of an IP.
Yep.
And then, does it get saddled with, a more complicated game or a lesser game or what have you? And how do we evaluate those? Because we do love those properties so much. We do want to play Groot, and so it's you can forgive a lot then, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to sort of create a war in the comments between Marvel and DC people, but I think that if this was exactly the same game except with DC characters, I don't think that it would have had the same legs, at least with our group. Just because Marvel is now such a ubiquitous name. I do think that in the future, once the game comes out, you sort of touched on it a little bit before, a sort of monthly comic book release, or even a quarterly comic book release of, hey, here's this awesome adventure, a mini adventure that you could run focused around, this secondary character, and here's that secondary character and some bad guys. Stats in the back, as well as some new abilities or spells or whatever. I think there's big room for that.
Yeah, when we filled out the survey, right? So you do the playtest, and then there's a survey online for you to leave your feedback. I left my feedback about it being really math heavy and relying on the IP, right? But one of the things it said was like, would you be interested in, adventures released in comic book format? And I was like, whoa, that, just like they did this in graphic novel format. Yeah, if there was a monthly comic that had a one-shot adventure, a couple pre-gens of new characters that you haven't seen before in the back, and like one new power every issue or something like that. Oh, and you could charge, the high end of comic book prices.
Yeah,
it.
$7.99, $8.99.
And I'd scoop that up monthly. I'd subscribe.
That's a good way to get people into the comic book stores. And Marvel did a really, really good job of supporting hobby stores and comic book stores. They had 2 alternate covers that were specific to comic book stores that, Marvel is sort of known now for doing their alternate covers with new comic books. They have multiple covers, but they've really got some awesome covers. Like Peach Momoko is a very prevalent comic book artist right now, and having that exclusivity for comic book stores, and then potentially in the future doing adventures specific to comics that gets you into the comic book store, I think is something that Marvel's doing very, very well.
Yep. And interesting too, in terms of then, fan feedback, there has been a lot of fan feedback that's definitely been bashing the playtest.
Yeah.
And I do think, I don't feel like I bashed it. Like I just being honest,
This is honest critique.
Yeah. And that's as far as I'll go. I'm still interested in it. I actually kind of like the 616 mechanic.
Yeah.
I just was surprised at how rules heavy people were willing to go because it was Marvel. That was fascinating to me. But a lot of a lot of criticism out there. This game's terrible. It's totally out of whack. It's so much math. This is garbage. There's so many better superhero games. There might be, but this one's not done yet. So I'm kind of reserving my.
We're probably still a year out, and it was $10.
Yeah,
like it was a playtest for $10.
Yeah, well,
can't really get any worse.
So some of the feedback I saw was this should have been free.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
That's rough.
Yeah, and I still I felt okay spending $10, and I even supported our local comic shop and got the alternate covers because I thought that was a cool thing that was going on. There is a YouTube channel I want to bring to your attention. Our friend Bear, who on Twitter is at Zenith Comics, he puts out a role-playing game called Heroic RPG. If you're looking for a role-playing game that's more similar to the old Marvel game from the 80s from TSR. But he has a YouTube channel called Forever DM, and he's been doing almost a video every single day on the Marvel playtest and ways to hack it and ways to expand it and different directions that he thinks the game should go in. And so if you're looking for a resource on the Marvel playtest, I would definitely encourage you to check out Forever DM on YouTube and at Zenith Comics on Twitter. And hi Bear, how you doing? Good to see you. And nice to connect. There's also on itch.io a Marvelous Heroes TTRPG jam that is just started.
Nice.
So put your money where your mouth is. If you're going to say this game sucks,
support the
then
others.
create another one, right? And support another one. And so there's this jam going on, Marvelous Heroes TTRPG jam going up until July 14th. So go check it out right now. I saw there's been about like 2 or 3 entries at this point, and more to come throughout the month of June. So if you've never checked out a game jam before, it's an opportunity for creators to kick out new games and expansions and adventures and powers and ideas. And this one obviously is focused on kind of a challenge to say like, hey, we can create a better game than this Marvel playtest, and we're going to prove it.
Yeah, do it.
So let's check it out.
Closing thought for me for the Marvel thing. I had meant to mention it. I think the most fun experience that I've had creating characters with everybody around the table in most recent years has been with this game.
There you go.
Everybody comes to the table with this cool, like, I made this superhero when I was a kid.
Right.
So I want to think about what they're wearing or what kind of powers in the game that they would have. And we're all sort of huddled around the table like, oh, on this page. And we're all just like laughing, having fun, creating superheroes for this team. We're not really worried about anything else going on in life at the moment. And I think as a GM, that moment was pretty sweet.
Great call. Yeah, the character creation's fun. And it was, we just came to the table. We had a couple copies of the book. We spread them out. And a lot of us created the characters at the table, almost like a session 0 and a session 1, all in the same, game, same game night. I'd encourage people to do that too. It is, check out the character creation, have fun dreaming up your hero. Good call, Jesse. I think that is true.
So, have you participated in any playtests, whether it be tabletop role-playing or otherwise? I participated in the Pathfinder 2.0 playtest. I participated in this one. I've also done a lot of things video game-based. I think it's really fun to be sort of part of the community that helps make the game as best as it can be. And there's always like goodies that you can get, like an early copy of a book that'll never get out, put out again. It's pretty fun to collect too. So let us know at everyeditionrpg.com or down in the comment sections below. It's time to loot the body. Today's Loot the Body, we're looking at G.I. Joe and Renegade Games Essence20 System. Yeah. So John, how do you feel about G.I. Joe having its own role-playing game?
I love it. No, so I'm a big G.I. Joe fan.
Sure.
I have been my whole life. Read the Real American Hero comic book. I had a subscription when I was a kid. I've been reading the newer the Return of Larry Hama and the comics, even up until the last couple of years. I love me some Joes. You know what I mean? So I was pretty excited about this. I'm not gonna lie. But I went into it thinking this isn't going to be any good. I mean, I'm a realist
we
too,
talked
right?
about Star Trek a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, this is I knew that this might be something that a fan is going to get, and they're going to love to read it, for the first couple days that they have it, and then it's going to go on the shelf, and then it'll never be touched again, and it'll probably never hit the table. And I recognize that this might be that kind of game. Okay? I fully recognize that. But as a G.I. Joe fan, if you're a G.I. Joe fan and a tabletop role-playing game fan, this is great. This is fun. Like, the first 30 pages are just lore and file cards on Joes. Like, come on. Who doesn't want, so it does update the mythology. It blends things from the cartoon and the comic book and the toys, and it does a really nice job of bringing those things together. So this is totally approachable just as a Joe fan who, G.I. Joe fan who just wants to read a G.I. Joe book. But that's not why we're here. This is not Every Edition the G.I. Joe fan podcast. This is Every Edition tabletop RPGs. And by goodness, we're going to talk about RPGs. So how's it function as a game? It is very much like 5th edition.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
It's not all that different from 5th edition. I would say the biggest difference is it has 4 ability scores or attributes, four major stats instead of 6. They're called the 4 S's, right? Strength, speed, smarts, and socials.
Yep.
So those are your four S's, and then from that are derived, 4 or 5 different skills from each of those attributes, and so that's basically the game. You're rolling a d20, and depending on how skilled you are, you have an additional die that you're rolling, right? So if you're a low-level skill, you'll roll a d4. And if you're like, next notch up, it's a d6. And then you roll a d8. And then, so it's got a little bit of that sort of like Dungeon Crawl Classics dice chain thing going on, right? So it definitely is aware of something like DCC and something like 5th edition and kind of marrying them together. If you're not skilled in something and you want to attempt it, you actually then roll with disadvantage.
Yeah,
so
just straight disadvantage.
Just straight disadvantage. Two d20s and you take the lowest. So again, learning something from 5th edition. So it's got a dice chain. It's got rolling with disadvantage. It uses all the sort of modern lingo of modern role-playing games.
Free action, bonus action, things like that.
All that stuff. So I haven't brought it to the table yet, but it looks like it's going to work.
Yeah, it looks very approachable from a 5th edition player.
Yeah.
I'm kind of confused why they didn't just go to 5th edition, but I can understand wanting to be your own thing. And
I swear that's what they said they were going to do at the beginning.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I thought that this was going to be G.I. Joe 5th edition.
Sure.
Right? Before the free comic book day, Essence20. That was the first time that logo came out. And I was like, what are they doing? I thought this was supposed to be 5th edition.
There could have been a pivot there internally.
Yeah. Right. So it is more of its own game, but it uses a lot of familiar language and concepts from 5th edition.
So I do like the addition of the dice chain. From a DM's perspective, most of my tables tend to have newer players. Mm-hmm. The constant, roll for sleight of hand, roll a d20. Oh, you're proficient in that. Add your proficiency. Add your dexterity. Add this. Add that. Add that. Players don't update their character sheets enough for that to be just sort of second nature. Mm-hmm. So they're constantly adding multiple things. If you're really good at acrobatics or whatever in the Essence20 system, you add a d8 to your roll. You roll a d20 plus a d8. Simple as that. You roll them, add them up, whatever comes up on the faces, and that's it.
Yeah, it makes one of the things that could be a little bit painful, which is like keeping track of bonuses, more fun because you get to roll more dice.
You get to roll more dice.
Right? Who doesn't like to roll dice? So that's cool, and I appreciate to me I was like they took something from Dungeon Crawl Classics and married it with 5th edition and then used disadvantage in a new and interesting way. So there were some things going on in this where I was like, okay, the people that made this. They're gamers. Yeah. They know what they're doing, and they took bits and pieces from here and bits and pieces from there. I would say the one thing that I would advise people, I think, when you bring this to the table, as a player, help your game master out and say like, hey, I'd like to use this skill in this moment. Don't sort of wait for the game master to ask you to make a roll or
tell you which one,
right, or to suggest, but you should volunteer. You should be saying like, oh, I want to try this, right? And because it's a new system with new skills and that kind of stuff, that's just going to help everybody along at the table. So take some ownership as a player. This really goes for any game.
Yeah.
If it's a skill-based game, right? Say, hey, I'd like to make this proficiency check or this particular roll, and request it of your game master rather than sort of waiting to be told to make a roll.
The DM or game master is typically in a role that's like, the god role, who is expected to know everything. And there's too much information in any game to know everything,
right?
Including like spells or vehicle combat or anything like that. So if you have a particular want or you think that this could be cool, just
make the suggestion.
Say it. Yeah, there's no harm in just asking.
That's right. Make the suggestion, and the game master's job is to figure out a way to say yes.
Yeah.
Right, like yes and, right?
Yes and.
The old rules.
Especially with new games like this, when everybody's new to it.
Right.
And this definitely seems like sort of we had looked at Power Rangers slightly when it was coming out, and we had talked about that being basically for people who are only Power Ranger fans.
Yeah.
G.I. Joe seems to be of the same cloth, very specific, but it's also a new game system.
Yep.
So like while you might be knowledgeable in all things Joe, it's definitely going to be helpful to be cooperative at the table.
Yeah, and it does back to this idea of the power of an IP. I looked at the Power Rangers book, and I'm not a huge Power Rangers fan, and I wasn't all that interested in the game. And then I ran out and bought the G.I. Joe book and was reading the whole and was very interested in the game. So like it's the same system. And the one just didn't do anything for me, and the other one, it's Joe's. It's good stuff, right?
Like I would have the same thing if they made this into like a Game of Thrones setting or some medieval fantasy. Yeah. I like the system as a whole, but the two that we looked at, Power Rangers and G.I. Joe, just don't speak to me.
Yeah.
So
So I think at the end of the day, if you are a G.I. Joe fan and a role-playing game fan, this is a no-brainer. The question comes up, though, I got it a lot on Facebook, people saying, yeah, but is the game any good? Honestly, I don't know yet. I haven't played it. But from a read, I like some of the things I'm seeing. I like how they took things from different games and kind of put their own little twist on it. And it uses the lingua franca of tabletop role-playing games of the day. It's very much of the 5th edition era, it seems like. So I would say it's even more of a slam dunk if you're a G.I. Joe fan, you're a tabletop role-playing fan, and you play 5th edition or you like 5th edition, definitely.
I think this would be a good pickup even to just get into the Essence20 system for whatever comes in the future. So you're ready to go as soon as whatever IP that you like, or if you like fantasy, if they do that, you can just grab it and hit the ground running.
Well, and next up is Transformers. And then coming right off of that is going to be My Little Pony. So there's going to be four Hasbro toy properties at least. Who knows if there's going to be even more after that. So there's my take on this. I know there was a wonderful conversation on Facebook. So I want to thank everybody who participated in that Facebook discussion thread talking about the G.I. Joe game. I think it was on the Dungeons and Dads Facebook group, which is a really fun group. They've been stuck in memes for a long time, having to do with no great D&D party exists except, and then they put a picture of a movie group or something like that, and it's but it's like
the Guardians.
Yeah. So I think the thread where I was like, hey, why don't we talk about games was sort of like a breath of fresh air, because everybody was like, these memes are really getting old, and they just keep coming. So, hi, Dungeons and Dads. Good to connect with you, and thanks for participating in that thread.
So, if I had to talk about a pet peeve regarding these books, specifically the G.I. Joe one and the Power Ranger book, and this spans to books other than, Renegade Games books. I'm not just sort of harping on them. If you have a core rule book, give me the core rules. I love adding flavor and lore and 30 pages of lore and whatnot, but please do not put it in the front of the book. I don't want to have to go like 10 or 15 pages into the book to find the table of contents. Just give it to me straight, and then at the end, put all the fanfare that you want, and I'll read it.
Yeah. Well, and so maybe Essence20 will come out with once all the 4 core books are out. Maybe they'll do a quick start or something like that.
Oh, sure, like just a starter set.
Boils down the rules.
Yeah.
Which it is like that is I would prefer, and they didn't do like so. The free RPG release was an adventure.
Yeah.
So they haven't done a quick start yet. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't surprise me if that was their next release.
Especially if this does well, which I think it will.
Yeah, I think it will too. All right, well, thanks, everybody. This was another episode of Every Edition, the Tabletop RPG Talk Show. I'm John.
I'm Jesse.
And hope to see you at Origins. Stop by and say hi, and we'll see you next time.